Good evening. Please take your seats. This evening's program is about to commence. Please ensure that your phones and other mobile devices are in the silent mode. However, throughout the event, we encourage you to take photos and post and tweet about your experience on social media using the hashtag IFGala22. And now, please welcome to the stage Impact Fund board members Dina Sharp and Jason Marsili.
It is so great to be together again, everybody. What an amazing thing to see a full room here. To be reminded that you all have legs. To be reminded that we're all different heights. To be reminded we all have clothes with a button, maybe two. And to finally, to be together again, in all seriousness. When the Impact Fund brought us all together for the last time in this room, almost 3 years ago, the world was a little bit of a different place. May 14, 2019, Donald Trump was president of the United States. Some of us had never used Zoom. And importantly, on this day in 2019, the Warriors beat the Trailblazers in the first game of the Western Conference Finals, 116-94. Those were simpler times, weren't they, my friends? If the last couple years have taught us anything at all, it's that we have to celebrate what we can, when we can, and that we have to stand up and do what we can, whenever we can. Yeah. The Impact Fund has been here doing exactly that for almost 30 years. Tonight, we celebrate that. Tonight, we celebrate reconnecting and being together again and celebrating everything that the Impact Fund does and can accomplish. We're going to hear about the inspiring work that the Impact Fund has been doing every single day while we've all been sitting on our couches. We're going to be reminded of how important it is to keep at it, no matter what. And as always, the organization is about the people. In addition to the true luminaries who make the Impact Fund what it is, I am so fortunate to serve on a board and on the Grant Advisory Committee with, again, a truly inspiring and diverse group of people who I will now ask to stand up, and I would ask you all to join me in appreciating the Board of Directors of the Impact Fund and the Grant Advisory Committee. Please stand up, folks. You can tweet all about it at IFGala22. Take a look at Instagram, and I'm going to hand it off to my co-host, Jason Marsili.
Thank you, Dina. So I actually got to meet Dina for the first time today. We embraced in a hug. And so many other board members that I got to meet for the first time today. So I joined the Impact Fund in January of 2020. Had previously been working with the Class Action Training Institute for 2 years in 18 and 19. But I remember the first flight that I canceled was on March 9th of 2020 when I was supposed to fly up here for our first board meeting. And this was the time when the Crown Princess was being brought into the harbor and they were going to disembark the COVID cases. And I thought to myself, you know what, maybe I shouldn't press my luck. We'll let this one pass. 2 years later, time goes on. But I will say this. Having spent those 2 years as a board member, not having met the other individuals that I work with, my Impact Fund existence was largely existing in a series of Hollywood Squares meetings. And yet it was still so fulfilling for me. So this opportunity now to be in a room with good people doing great work and getting that energy and that vibe makes it so much more worthwhile. I could continue my time on the board of directors in a two-dimensional Hollywood Squares type format and still be satisfied. But having this opportunity to spend time with you all, the good people doing the great work, and having now this opportunity to celebrate together the 30 years that the Impact Fund has been making a difference is truly special. So I'm honored to be here with Dina and the honorees that we are going to speak to and hear from tonight. So let's get started. Before we kick it off, though, we have to acknowledge the organizations and the firms who've made this all possible, specifically the Kays and McLean Partners Foundation, Gibbs Law Group,
Hold your applause, folks.
until the end. I mean, there are a lot of people who've contributed to this. So, Gibbs Law Group, Gerard Sharp, Lichten and List Riordan, Leif Gebrazer, Hyman and Bernstein, Joseph Savary Law Firm, Miller Shaw, Sanford Heisler Sharp, Wayne Lamprey and Dina Watson Lamprey, and Arlene and Emma Mayerson, and all of the other firms that you will find inside of your program guide. A round of applause to all of them for making this possible. The Impact Fund is really able to make an impact by virtue of those contributions and the contributions that individuals like yourself make year in and year out. So it is important that we acknowledge the fact that this cannot be done without them. Dina?
The Impact Fund's mission is probably well known to you all, but just as a reminder, our mission is to provide grants, is one, advocacy, two, and education to support impact litigation on behalf of marginalized communities seeking economic, environmental, social, and racial justice. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here, and we need your help funding it, and to help us help you do that, we're happy to introduce the inimitable Michael Tate.
Wow, thank you. Inimitable. I wasn't expecting that word. You did not use that during the dress rehearsal earlier. She actually didn't say anything about me that was special during the dress rehearsal, but I'm just teasing. This is wonderful. And actually, I'm not. It is wonderful. It is wonderful to be back. I looked in my own personal calendar, and I think my first Impact Fund Gala was in 2016. I went back into my Google Drive and turned back the hands of time, and since that time, I have fallen in love with this organization. I look at Jocelyn. I've seen you in always looking fabulous and wonderful outfits, and of course, yes, you can make some noise for Jocelyn being a fabulous dresser, but more important, a fabulous executive director. To Teddy Witherington, now the deputy director, who is a whip cracker in making fabulous events and fun fundraisers. He helps put the fun in fundraising. So my name is Michael Tate. If you have not seen me at this event or something in San Francisco, buckle up. We're going to have some fun today. I always admit when I come to this event, I love being around lawyers and law students and legal aids and paralegals, because once upon a time, many, many moons ago, I was an attorney. I know you're like shocked. Attorneys are not funny. Attorneys are just supposed to push work through. Yes, I spent 3, I'll call them wonderful years at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville back in the late 80s, 90s. You're supposed to gasp because you can't believe I could possibly be that old, but indeed I did, and at that time, doing anything in law that was not going to work at a law firm was going way off the beaten track. And at that time, corporate lawyers, my friends who were going to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, or so-and-so, so-and-so, or just so-and-so, you can fill in the blank, the notion of doing pro bono or doing work like the Impact Fund does, and its partnership with so many law firms and so many attorneys, was that little part of your life where you had those few little pro bono hours that you were forced to do at your firm. So when I came to this event, I was encouraged and moved by corporate attorneys and people at all strata of the legal profession, how they leaned in to the work of the Impact Fund. So all of you are here. You know that it's important. I'm a believer. I'm a donor. I know that you all will be as well. I noticed that the front rows, save for staff and a few bold people, are empty. As you can imagine, I won't be staying on the stage. So when we start with our paddle raise, don't think I can't get closer to you in a socially and safe way. So without further ado, and thank you for indulging that, understanding who I am delighted and honored to welcome to the stage my friend, the leader of this organization, the executive director of the Impact Fund, Jocelyn Larkin.
everyone. Okay, welcome everyone here and on our simulcast on YouTube to this wonderful occasion, marking the Impact Fund's 30th anniversary. I can't believe it. I am delighted to share the evening with all of you and with our really inspiring honorees. In the midst of so much distressing news at home and abroad, it's a privilege to have a brief respite to celebrate the organization that I love and our community. So it is a particular pleasure, of course, to be with most of you in this beautiful space again. I want to express my appreciation to all of you who could and did get vaxxed, boosted, and tested. Tells me that you care not just about your own health, but about our collective health and well-being. So thank you very much. So it's a real party. Does everybody remember how to do that? Because to be honest, I have been finding myself oddly rusty as, with the, normal social interaction. Like, was I the only one pondering which pair of yoga pants were right for tonight's event? And how about scrounging around on the closet floor for a pair of, what do you call them? Shoes. And the whole hair washing thing, so much work. Oh dear, I see that some of you are looking around desperately trying to figure out how to change your personal contact comfort level badge from green to red. I really did wash my hair, so it's fine. Since I'm guessing that I'm not the only one relearning Social Skills 101, I thought I'd offer just a few suggestions that I hope are useful to all of you, because we're all back together again. So don't do what I now seem to do automatically when I meet someone. Hello, good to see you. I tested negative this morning. When someone asks you what you've been up to, try not to just stare off into the middle distance, contemplating what's happened to the last 2 years of your life. Focus, okay. Silence all those reminders that you have set up on your phone that were somehow supposed to help you survive the pandemic. Beep, take that daily walk. Beep, drink water. Beep, meditate. Am I the only one that's like really annoyed by those reminders to meditate, to be calm? Try to show some genuine interest in your person's new passions for gluten-free baking, bonsai gardening, World War II history, Leslie Bruckner, you're out there, or macrame. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to hear about how you've learned to play trumpet with nothing but the help of YouTube videos. And you shouldn't be shy about sharing your exciting summer plans to take a driving trip to San Jose, unless, of course, there's another surge, because who can get enough of the Winchester Mystery House, after all, right? And if they want to tell you about a really funny video that they watched on TikTok this morning, you can't just turn your video off like on Zoom. Instead, you look over their shoulder, lie, and say that you see a friend that just came in. See, it's starting to slowly come back to all of us, how we used to manage this whole cocktail party thing, right? Okay. As you've heard, we're celebrating our 30th anniversary, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge our founder, Brad Seligman, who is here tonight. Brad is here tonight with his wife, Sarah. It was Brad's vision and incredible tenacity that created and built this organization over its first 2 decades. Thank you very much, Judge Seligman, for all that you did, because none of us would be here, but for that incredible idea. So while Brad was the first to conceive of and create a grant program to help fund social justice litigation, 3 decades later, there are now at least a half a dozen or more organizations doing what we call mission-based litigation funding, and we're thrilled about that. We remain the oldest and the largest, and you'll hear more about some of our grants in a moment. I want to acknowledge the work of our grant program director, Amy Danowitz, who had a sick child and could not be here tonight, so I want to acknowledge Amy. She has expanded and modernized our grant program, but any of you who works with her knows that for all of that work, she always keeps in the forefront of her mind the needs of our grantees and their communities, and that is really how she makes our program what it is. And she is ably assisted by Shayla Chandler, who joined us last summer and is a valued member of our team. So Shayla, there she is, right back there. Our litigation team, led by Lindsay Nacco, along with the law fellow Rihanna Hidalgo, and she is, and paralegal Luna Khalil, who's been helping us tonight, is busy this spring with a major housing case challenging the overcharging of Section 8 tenants. We are co-counseling with our friends at the Goldstein firm, as well as Centre Legal and the law offices of Andrew Wolf. Lindsay and her team, together with our very able events crew, also put on our second online class action conference in February, attended by more than 400 people. Lacking the easy fun of in-person schmoozing, Lindsay created a wonderful forum for our attendees to share their victories, now known as Good News Happy Hour, a favorite for all of us. And while the conference was a great success in the Zoom world, we are eager to move back to an in-person format next year. We are now more than 2 years into our class action notice project, spearheaded by our business analyst, Alex Lara, who is right here, standing right back here. Bringing together plain language experts, graphic designers, and software engineers, we have done something that's going to be on page 6 here. Yes. The modest goal. We have taken on the modest goal of revolutionizing class notice. We are creating class notices that real people can read and use. We have recently begun discussions with the Federal Judicial Center about the work, and it's fair to say that they were impressed with what we are doing. And if you want to see it, Alex has it on his phone tonight. I also want to give a shout out to our development and communications team, who made tonight possible and who do the work every day of getting our message out. A particular thank you to our Deputy Director, Teddy Basham-Witherington, whose Herculean efforts ensured we could all gather and do so safely, as well as our newly promoted development manager, Ashley LaFranchi, also newly married, and then our newest staff member, Ellie Gordon. And finally, a word about another new staff member, our finance manager, Erin Nunn, who joined us last September. Whatever the circumstance, Erin is calm, manages to keep us all paid and the auditors happy. We could not do all of this without her, so thank you to Erin. So this is the point in my remarks where I close with some heartfelt thoughts and a witty joke, but I've forgotten how to do all that too, so hey, yo, Jason.
Well, to stay along with the witty joke, I will say, Jocelyn, I actually did wash my hair for every day throughout the pandemic. One of the skills that I did not forget. But on a serious note, I want to kind of turn the course of the evening to our first honoree and acknowledge the fact that despite all the wonderful things that Jocelyn said, one thing that stands out is that over the last 30 years, the Impact Fund has been able to donate $8 million to over 700 different causes focused on economic, environmental, racial, and social justice. And what makes this gala so special is taking a small period of time to honor some of those success stories and hear what the work of the Impact Fund was able to do and assist them in creating change. And I want to talk tonight about our first honoree, the Center for Food Safety, for its success in a clean water and environmental justice case challenging the unlawful discharge of animal waste from an industrial dairy in Hawaii. Now, in your program guide, it acknowledges Sylvia Wu, but tonight in her stead, we have with us Meredith Stevenson, who is a staff attorney for the Center for Food Safety, who will join us now to accept this award.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Meredith Stevenson. I'm a staff attorney with Center for Food Safety. It is an absolute honor to accept this award from the Impact Fund on behalf of Center for Food Safety. So people are always confused by our name, Center for Food Safety. We get calls all the time about food poisoning, other random questions. So when asked what I do, I say that I'm an attorney litigating for food safety, meaning the safety of our environment and the future of our planet. The Big Island Dairy litigation is an excellent example of what we do at the Center for Food Safety. A local community's access to clean water and to clean air was jeopardized by a big corporation that came in and purchased a local dairy and turned it into a factory farm. So we heard about it. We reached out to that community to see how we could help. And that community responded. We communicated with them. They tried to resolve the issue on their own, but when they couldn't, we brought a lawsuit under the Clean Water Act. And just a year later, the corporation admitted its illegal pollutants and illegal pollution, and that factory was shut down. Yes. But most importantly, the success of our lawsuit in the Big Island Dairy litigation was because of the Impact Fund. This work is incredibly important. So this Impact Fund allowed us to begin this litigation and helped us to access additional funds as it went on. So on behalf of Center for Food Safety and the communities we work with, thank you so much. A small piece of the world was made better by you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you so much to the Center of Food Safety for that and for doing so much more than addressing food poisoning problems. I'd like to talk about our next honoree tonight, the Lawyers for Civil Rights. They need no introduction, but the situation that they address does. In Lowell, Massachusetts, which is home to one of the nation's largest Cambodian American populations, also has a large Latino community. Together, the Asian American and Latino communities in Lowell account for approximately 40% of Lowell's population. The diversity of the city is what draws so many people to Lowell. They want to live there, they want to work there, and yet Lowell's diversity, and probably a surprise to no one in this room, was not reflected at all in its elected bodies. Despite being almost a majority-minority city, Lowell City Council and School Committee was virtually all white. Have been throughout the city's history. The reason probably doesn't need to be explained to most of you, but is that the electoral system was used to elect officials, and it unlawfully dilutes the votes of communities of color. We see this pattern replicated across the country over and over and over. And that's what the Lawyers for Civil Rights began working on. They looked at the community and they began to address the inequity. Sadly, Oren Selstrom from Lawyers for Civil Rights cannot be with us this evening, but here in his place to tell us a bit more about their victory is my friend and former Impact Fund board member, Eric Havian.
I was holding that thing, but I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I just want you to understand that. I'm here as like one of those cutout figures, you know, when you stand there and there's a cardboard figure below you and you put your face in there. That's me tonight. And I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of the Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston. I've been on the Impact Fund board for basically forever. When I joined the Impact Fund board, Michael Tate was in high school and dreaming about going to the University of Virginia Law School, and then they finally passed term limits to get me off the board, and so now I miss the organization, but I love what they do. I grew up about a half an hour from the city of Lowell in Massachusetts, and I had no idea what was going on there. Dina has already described it to some extent, that Lowell was a city that was about half white, half non-white citizens. And yet, not a single member of elected government was other than white. And that persisted for decades. And the reason, which will come as, oh, by the way, in addition, I should add that not surprisingly, 80% of the police force and 90% of the teachers in Lowell were white. And of course, the reason was at-large voting, where the voters simply majority rules for each public office. And of course, I probably don't need to tell this audience that that sort of a system has a tendency to allow a white majority or any majority to essentially overrun and box out groups that are not part of that majority group. So the Lawyers for Civil Rights sued in 2017 under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, one of the sections that has not yet been gutted by the Supreme Court. And for 2 years, the city fought that lawsuit. After a year, the Lawyers for Civil Rights approached the Impact Fund for a grant of $35,000 to hire experts. And that was sort of at the high end of the grants we were giving at the time, but we recognized that this was a righteous case, potentially having a very significant impact, and so we funded the litigation. We now see the results of what's happened. The Impact Fund gave the money to the Lawyers for Civil Rights, and they negotiated a consent decree up until that point. Not to say that the money caused this, but prior to that point, the city had been unwilling to come to the table. The Lawyers for Civil Rights fought them, and they started to realize that they were going to lose. They finally came to the settlement table, and they reached a consent decree in which they had sort of a landmark piece of election reform, where the city of Lowell was presented with 6 options for how to reform their electoral system. They were allowed to pick 2 in their discretion of these 6. And then those 2 went to the voters, and one of those 2, a hybrid system, was selected by 75% of the electorate. And under that system, they went from a completely at-large election system to a mix of districts that were designed to enhance participation of groups that had otherwise been excluded. And it left a couple of at-large districts, 3 for the city council, 2 for the school board, but the rest of them were selected on the basis of these districts. And we can now see the results of that change in a very remarkable way. In 2021, the first election under the new system, I think the headlines kind of tell the story. So I'm going to just read a couple of those headlines following that Lowell city election. The Boston Globe, their headline said, "A changing of the guard in Lowell as a diverse leadership takes office." WBUR, the local public television station, their headline was, "First Cambodian American mayor in U.S. takes office in Lowell." For the first time, that applause is well-deserved, but not for the Lawyers for Civil Rights and the folks in Lowell who got elected. For the first time, Lowell will have 3, or does now have 3, Cambodian American city councilors. The new city council is also, not just those groups, but the new city council is also going to include the first biracial member, and the school board has the first black woman ever to be on the school board in Lowell. The bottom line now, where there had been no white people, non-whites in government in Lowell previously, now it's 35% people of color who are now on the city council and the school board. The lawyers for civil rights in their lawsuit were widely credited with this result. This was not something where, well, there's a little bit of this and there's a little bit of that. It was the lawsuit. Litigation is what caused this change. And the Globe said it all. Quote, "The influx of diversity stems from a groundbreaking 2017 voting rights lawsuit filed by lawyers for civil rights." That's the statement. As reported in the press, and this is particularly inspirational, I think, the new Cambodian mayor, so the mayor is also Cambodian, whose father was executed by the Khmer Rouge and whose mother shepherded her family to avoid landmines and starvation for 4 years while living in Cambodia before coming to the United States. He said, quote, "America may not have streets paved with gold, as his family imagined while they were living in the refugee camps in Cambodia. But it's a land where democracy is possible because of systems of checks and balances and principles like fairness, equality, and transparency." That was his thought about the American system. These days, that's very inspiring. We don't hear those sentiments very often. There are times when I think we all feel a sense of powerlessness as we see what's going on in certain quarters, a deep despair and frustration about the ability of our institutions to correct injustices can set in easily. But groups like the Lawyers for Civil Rights, and yes, like the Impact Fund, are out there fighting that sense of futility. These groups represent hope for the future for all of us. Real change can happen, but only if people are not discouraged by obstacles and seemingly very long odds. That's a sentiment that the Lawyers for Civil Rights can be proud of, and I think the staff, supporters, and board of the Impact Fund can also be proud of. So it's with great pride and optimism that I accept this award on behalf of Lawyers for Civil Rights. Thank you.
When you hear Eric's remarks, it's obvious why we kept him around for as long as we did. And I just want to give a separate round of applause to Eric for all of his years of service. He's embarrassed, but it's well deserved. So when I started on the board, I also became a member of the Grant Advisory Committee, which was and has been and continues to be a wonderful experience. To be on the front side of the decision making of whether or not we are going to fund a particular project and to what degree is, for me, what is really at the heart of so much of what the Impact Fund does. And over the years, the laundry list of cases that the Impact Fund has been able to fund is long and distinguished. Cases on behalf of Planned Parenthood and foster youth to defend against health and privacy rights, challenges to the abuse of constitutional rights of those experiencing homelessness in Boise, Idaho, and Phoenix, Arizona, grants challenging the unconstitutionality of living conditions in youth correctional facilities and their right to access counsel. The cases go on, and if you visit the website, you'll see a lot of the recent grantees that the Impact Fund has been able to contribute to. One of the hardest things from the Grant Advisory Committee perspective is, sometimes people will make applications and they won't be the best cases to fund. Sometimes they will be, but what's difficult is when we want to be able to do more, but we don't necessarily have the funds to do so. Those are the hard decisions that we really have to make. And that's where I want to turn to this point in time of the evening where we seek to restore the coffers and give ourselves an opportunity to continue to fund that litigation. so the Impact Fund can continue to do its work.
It's true, and you need to do no less than listen to our two inspiring speakers to see what a ripple effect these grants can really have and what a difference they can make. It really is an honor, like Jason says, to serve on the Grant Advisory Committee. It's like going to a candy store for a lawyer. It is truly so rewarding, and it's just too hard to pick. So I think what we're asking you to do is to help us have to make fewer difficult decisions, fill those coffers, and help us just say yes to everybody. Come on. And with that, I'll pass it over to somebody who can encourage you to say yes better than I can.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I think that Jason and Dina really kind of hit on all the points, but what I'm going to invite you, as I am noted in the program as an auctioneer, and while I definitely do that at this particular event, and I love sharing this with Teddy and Jocelyn, everyone is a winner. I was going to say there are no winners or losers, but everyone is a winner. Particularly, what are you two laughing about over here? Okay, bad law students. This is that moment, and I think when you hear the stories about what happened in is it Ukala? Did I say that correctly? In Hawaii, and then the Center for Lawyers for Civil Rights. Did I get that? Yes. That impact is so incredible. And I don't know, Brad, if it was you or if it came later. The first time I worked with the organization and I saw that really impactful, it seemed so simple, the vision of all the little fish gathered together in collection going after the shark. While it has a kind of nostalgic, old school feel, that is exactly what the Impact Fund does each and every day. It's small groups of people coming together, amplifying their voices. So what I am here to do is I'm here to celebrate. I'm here to be a person that amplifies. I'm here to be a person to encourage. So there is space and there is room, as I like to call it, and Jocelyn, I swear I won't fall. It's a big step for a man of a certain age. There is room on the Impact Fund train for everyone's participation. So first, I'm going to invite you to find your paddle. If you have now put that underneath you, or you have the little dessert sitting on top of it, because that is how you will indicate your enthusiasm and excitement for the Impact Fund. The other thing I would like to draw your attention to that was also on your chair, there is what we call in the business a Remit Envelope. And what is important about that is, while we love when your paddle goes in the air, and we're gonna have some fun, to actually close out the deal, as it were, you're gonna need to use that pen, also provided by the Impact Fund. So there was no stone left unturned in completing that. You have a Remit card that has space for you to indicate the amount that you're going to give. You have a pen to fill that out. And I think you have a paddle to indicate your enthusiasm. So with that, I think we are all ready. I always start at what I call a somewhat audacious level, but you know, it's a fundraiser, and you don't raise funds if you don't ask people and move them and inspire them. So hopefully you have been. So I'm going to start off and invite anyone who was able to help us out at the $5,000 level. If there's anyone who can help with a gift at the $5,000, right up here in the front row. Thank you, my friend right here. Thank you so much. Is there anyone who would like to join that first person kicking us off? Don't feel pressure, but you know, I'll just kind of stroll down the aisle at a socially distant way to invite you to do that. Well, I'm going to thank my friend in the front row, and we're going to keep the train going. We want to make sure that everyone who is able to make a gift. We want to find that level. So our next stop is probably no surprise, is $2,500. Is there anyone who can help at the $2,500 mark? It was so funny, I said that, and then you looked to the side. I was like, I wonder what she's thinking. I like that. I see you. Thank you right there at $2,500. So thank you so much. And I think you're being given lovely cards of acknowledgement. So thank you, Shayla. She's on it. She's new and she's on her game. I think I saw my friend Christopher in the back where you also had your paddle up. Thank you at $2,500. Thank you so much. Anyone else at the $2,500 level? I'm just going to stroll to this side of the room to make sure. I know you all are engaged, and we're going to get to that level, so there's no pressure. I just want to acknowledge this side of the room and the activity that we look forward to happening. Next level is $1,000. This is what I start calling my venti latte level. That means if you're willing to spend $7 on a drink many times a day, thank you right here, my friend, at $1,000. You can make that gift. Thank you right here, my friend, with the lovely haircut. And I saw someone in the back. Who was that, my friend in the back? Thank you, sir. Make sure we get a card for the gentleman in the back right there. Thank you so much. And thank you. Well, you're incredibly polite, and I thank you at $1,000. Anyone else at the $1,000? Oh, speak up, Mr. Marsili. I like that. From the podium. Jason Marsili at $1,000. Anyone else? Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a pleasure. This gentleman right here, we want to make sure he gets a card, and you have your remit. We're going to keep on chugging. Our next stop is $500. Is anyone at the $500? I feel like I'm slightly stalking, but I'm just kind of getting a little closer. Thank you right here at $500. Is there anyone else who can help out? And I see two people all the way in the back, but you are still on the Impact Fund train at $500. Thank you. And subtle, but very declarative, right there at $500 in the back. Thank you so much at $500. You know what to do to close out that remit card. Anyone else at $500? Up. Oh, I like that. It was late breaking. What moved you? That was like a moment. I was just about to move on. Oh, I have style and swagger. Who knew? Hey. Okay, thank you at $500. So if anyone else has moved, we're going to move on to $250. A couple nice dinners in San Francisco right here at $250. And thank you with the lovely ombre cowl neck at $250. Most people don't know that. You have to ask a gay man. An ombre cowl neck at $250. My friend right here at $250. And then the lovely right there at $250. Anyone else at the $250 level? We're going to go to the last stop on the train, and this is when I will be overwhelmed by the wind of placards going up. $100. Is anyone who can? There she is, $100, always looking smart and ready to go. And we have our friends here at $100, and that's a hot row right there. And right there at $100. Anyone else on this side of the room? There you are in the back at $100. I see you. Anyone else at the $100 level? So thank you, I see you, and thank you so much. Here's what I'm going to invite you to do. There are all sorts of levels on the remit card. We invite everyone, whatever level you raised your hand, certainly we invite you to complete that. There were higher levels. There's a $10,000 level. I didn't say that. And if you were like, how dare he not say that amount? There is a space for that box to be checked on the remit card, and I invite you to do that. Perhaps you wanted to do 50 or 25 because that's what your budget affords. That is fantastic. I invite you to write that as well because you know what? Every dollar you know will be stewarded well. It will be stretched, and as Dina said, they want to not have to say no and make those choices. So friends, I thank you for your generosity. You're incredible. I have style and swagger. Thank you, my friend. I'm gonna put that on my resume and turn it back over to Jason and Dina. Thank you.
Didn't I tell you he was inimitable? It's a big word, but it's true. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. Among his many accolades, he currently serves as the Soros Equality Fellow at Open Society Foundation. He's the former executive director of the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. He's the author of several acclaimed books. As if that isn't enough, he's also the co-founder of Restore Oakland and Justice for Families, both of which are advocacy organizations. And he's helped build California's first statewide network for families of incarcerated youth. So it's my privilege and my pleasure now to introduce Zachary Norris. And to give him this award.
It's big.
I don't deserve it. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna put this down.
It is wonderful to see all of your beautiful faces. You all are so well dressed. And no, it's true. And I appreciate Jocelyn for naming that some of our social graces we have forgotten. I arrived at 3:45 for the tech rehearsal, woefully underdressed. Like the yoga jumpsuit that Jocelyn mentioned, that was me. And I had 3:45 to the picture taking was about, what, 5 or maybe 45 minutes thereafter. But I was born in San Francisco, and so I know this neighborhood. And I was like, Macy's is across the street. We are going to make that trip to Macy's right now. And we made that trip to Macy's, me, myself, and I. And literally, I had this suit on, and they're taking the tags off while I'm paying in Macy's. But I was like, I am not going to let Chris down. Chris is the board chair at the Impact Fund. Give it up to Chris Schreiber. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So I'm here, and I'm appropriately dressed, so we're already at victory level. This is the only time that I have ever gotten a gig, partly because I played basketball, because my basketball skills are not that. I play basketball with Chris on Monday nights, and that's partly how we met. And speaking of victory, when 40-somethings and older play basketball is not getting injured. That is the only thing I'm tracking on the court. And it is a victory to have some time just to do something that I love. In the context of this global pandemic, being married to an amazing public speaker who next year, Saru Jayaraman, she is amazing. I'm always giving shout outs. Abby knows. Abby's won quite a few awards with my partner. We have 2 kids who are, my younger daughter is 9 going on 10, and my older daughter is 12 going on 29. And she wants to be an adult already. And I'm like, have you seen the world? Are you familiar with what's happening outside our doors? Because it's not easy. But all of that aside, I want to just thank Jocelyn. I want to thank Teddy. I want to thank Chris for the honor and the privilege to speak with you all. When I think about what's happening in the world, when I think about the fact that we had an attempted coup, that we see voter suppression, that trans communities are under attack, that LGBTQIA communities are under attack, that women writ large are under attack, that is when my dad mode kicks in. And so when I hear my daughter saying, I'm ready to be an adult, I'm like terrified. I am worried. What is her experience going to be like? And yet I'm inspired by her. I know that she's probably thinking, well, damn, I can do better than y'all are doing out there. But I want to encourage us, because the work that you have heard about is incredible. And I want to challenge us to do more still. I want to challenge us on behalf of my daughters, on behalf of your family members, your kids, and your grandkids. I wrote a book about safety partly because my daughters represent a sort of trifecta of vulnerability. They are young, they are brown, and they are female. And one of my daughters identifies as pansexual. And because we are among friends, I will admit that I did not know what that meant. But I am happy that she is in a school environment where she's able to find and explore her identity in a way that is supported, that is age appropriate, and is surrounded by caring adults. Yes. And I think about that school teacher in Florida who was recently fired for doing nothing more than talking about her sexual orientation. We are living in times that for too many are afraid to be themselves. And folks have talked about Donald Trump, and we have other architects of anxiety who drive fear to divide and conquer us. They tell us, don't trust your neighbor at the border, don't trust your neighbor in distant lands, don't trust your neighbor around the block. Don't trust your neighbor of a differing sexual orientation or gender identity. This status quo is dangerous for too many, and because our fates are linked, it's dangerous for all of us. We've seen that in the context of a global pandemic, in the context of environmental catastrophe. And so I want to challenge us to understand that if we are going to get to safety, we are going to have to take some calculated risks. Some calculated risks. Because safety is not the absence of vulnerability. Safety is not manufactured by fear and driven by conformity. Safety is actually the ability to be vulnerable. It's the ability to say, you know, I came and I wasn't appropriately dressed, but I made it to Macy's. And it takes a little bit of courage. But I believe that I am in a space of good people and that we are building beloved community. And tonight I want to tell you about someone who I believe exemplified courage and relationship building, beloved community building. His name was Alan Feaster. And Alan I met in this same hotel. Not this building, but the old St. Francis Hotel. And when I walked over, it brought back all of these feelings of when I first met Alan. You see, Alan had a shoe care stand. So if you're in the old hotel and you walk past all the fancy ballrooms and the pictures with presidents, you'll find a sort of sunken-in shoe care stand. And I had been hired by the Ella Baker Center as an organizer, and one of my first tasks was to go to talk to Alan Feaster. And I was terrified. First of all, I wasn't trained as a lawyer, let alone an organizer. But secondly, what do you say to someone who has lost their teenage son? I didn't know much about Alan, but I knew that his son, Darrell Feaster, and Dion Whitfield were found hanged in their cell in a California Youth Authority youth prison. But I put one foot in front of the other, and thankfully when I arrived to Alan, he was with his back to me, and he was talking to the person whose shoes he was caring for. And now being a parent myself, the thing that always sticks with me is, how did he get out of bed? I couldn't tie my own shoes if I lost one of my child, let alone take care of one of y'all's shoes. But there he was, and not only was he doing that, he was lifting up who his son was. He was telling this person in that chair that I may have lost my son, but I am adopting each and every one of these young people in this California Youth Authority youth prison system. And that's what he did. I was supposed to be recruiting Alan, but he organized me. Every time he showed up at a Families for Books Not Bars meeting, he would sing. He would sing Motown songs that would lift everybody's spirit. Or he would sing songs that allowed each and every one of us to just cry. He would speak out. He would go to the Capitol. And he was determined. Alan really kept the group of us together. And thankfully, there was a group of attorneys, not unlike you all. And I'm a true confession, also attorney past the bar and everything. So I'm with good folks. The prison law office had instigated litigation, really calling out the conditions inside the California Youth Authority youth prisons. They were describing the great lengths to which families were going just to see their children. Families were 250 miles on average from their kids. They had to pass through an ordeal, a gauntlet of different trials and tribulations just to get a visit. They might be told they couldn't visit because they had on the wrong color pair of pants. They might be told they couldn't visit because their entire kids' unit was on lockdown. And if they did get a visit, they might not know in what state they would find their child. You see, CYA, the California Youth Authority, was rife with violence. And unsurprisingly, 3 out of 4 young people were being rearrested within just a year of their release. In the state of California, this state was spending over $100,000 per year per young person on this system. The reality was that what was happening inside of our state-run youth prisons was torture. Young people were being subjected to 23-hour-a-day isolation for weeks and sometimes months on end. And that's what was the case for Darrell and his cellmate. They were on isolation for the better part of 18 months before their death in 2004. And so faced with these facts, families said, we want to shut these youth prisons down. And that was a huge deal. This was not bipartisan criminal justice reform era. This was not any of that. This was a different time around the turn of the century. And so we went to the Capitol in Sacramento, a handful of us, and legislators literally tried to laugh us out of their offices. They closed doors in our faces, but we persisted. We were determined. And what started as a handful of families became an over 1,000 family network of folks across the state. And we did what good organizers do. We got some t-shirts, because you can't do good organizing without t-shirts, y'all. On the front, they said, close CYA prisons. On the back, they said, open youth opportunities. And we kept going delegation after delegation. We had legislators like Nancy Skinner and others stood with us and said, we need change. And even though other legislators said, you'll never close a single youth prison, in many ways they were correct. Because through our campaign, we didn't close a single youth prison. We closed 5 of 8 youth prisons across the state of California. And in 2020, Governor Newsom signed legislation to phase out the remaining 3 state-run youth prisons. And our work continues. As was mentioned, I co-founded an initiative called Restore Oakland, which is really designed to put forward our vision of what youth justice looks like. It's sort of like a solar panel, but for the new community safety infrastructure movement. And it is founded and grounded in restorative justice and economic opportunity. And what I need you to know about that victory is that it wasn't just a victory for human rights and human dignity. It was also a victory for public safety, because as we were closing youth prisons, youth crime continued to decline during that same period. Because guess what? When you treat young people with dignity and respect, they do better. This is something that I think you all are familiar with. Given the work you do, you challenge companies and governments to take the high road. You know that the surest path to safety and shared prosperity is actually treating people with dignity and respect. And I think it's the only path to shared safety and prosperity. And so, as I take a sip of water, because my lips can sometimes do that, I want to just thank you for the work that you're doing. I want to thank you for your work moving folks to take the high road. I want to thank you for your understanding that each and every one of us should be treated with dignity and respect. You all have already been doing the work on behalf of tenants, on behalf of workers, on behalf of communities who deserve healthy, safe workplaces, environments, and communities. So tonight, we celebrate. And I know that doing this work when some of your victories can be fighting injustice, when you can't wholly undo what's been done to our communities, that sometimes a victory can feel more like a sigh of relief than it can a slam dunk. But know that the work that you do is meaningful. It is meaningful to folks like Alan Feaster and Joyce Cook and Lourdes Duarte and Laura Brady and so many of the families that I worked with. And it's meaningful for all of the communities that you've heard about tonight. And so tonight we celebrate. And whether you celebrate with shots on the basketball court like Chris and I do, or you celebrate with shots at the bar, or you do both or neither, do you, but celebrate. Tonight we celebrate. I want to thank you for your work. I want to thank you for your courage, because the courage we need is already in us. And the spirit of folks like Alan Feaster and Ella Baker is with us tonight. So let's keep taking risks. Let's keep being courageous. Let's keep building beloved community. Let's create a world where each and every one of us knows that they are a part of a human family. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary, for those inspiring remarks, truly. And thank you, everyone, for being here, for participating, for giving. Make sure that you let your Fund the Future pledgers know your check is coming. Get your envelope. And we do really thank you all for being here. We do have a lot to celebrate. Jason.
Just one last thank you to the sponsors for making this evening possible, and a new thank you to Macy's for dressing up Zachary, packaging a story as profound as his in such great fashion. The work doesn't stop here. Everyone in this room is going to continue to do the fight, and that quest for economic and environmental, racial, social justice will continue. I think what's important for us in this room to do is to spread the word to those who are not here, who need to hear this message, to need to understand that there are people, like-minded people, good people doing great work in a room that is worthy of celebration, and that the fight will continue. So thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes tonight's event. We thank you for your participation. Please take a memento home with you. These will be to your right as you leave the room.